It's time to get you caught up with all things sports.
Yes! 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 Yes!
On the throw-in.
One thing is certain. None of this is possible without you, the listeners.
From baseball, football, wrestling, and more, covering local Cincinnati sports, stories, news, and highlights.
Why is he always calling me me?
With your host, Justin Trento.
When this all said and done, we're going to look back and remember this is what started it all.
Available on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel.
Let's play the ball! Let's play the ball!
What is going on, everyone, and welcome to a Saturday's edition of the Throw-In. My name is Justin, and today is Saturday, January 20th of 2024. This week has kind of been on and off. I did a show back in on Tuesday. I spent a lot of this week uploading all of the last 2 weeks of shows to our audio platforms. And then I was going to do a show on Thursday, kind of got occupied. A lot of things kind of, the schedule just was piled up. Friday had some guests over. So I was going to do a show, but, the time kind of maybe just got away. And so, excuse me, gosh. So I still want to make sure I get a couple of programs in this weekend. So making sure we did get a show in today, and then I don't know, I'll talk to the wife, maybe get something in tomorrow morning, but we will just have to wait and see. But today we got a lot of things to cover because we are just 1 week away from the Royal Rumble. We got some big news heading into that, some updated breaking news in that matter. And on top of that, we are just hours away from the divisional round kickoffs, kicking things off today. Day one, we have the Houston Texans and the Baltimore Ravens, the 1 and 4 seed, followed by later on tonight, we have the Green Bay Packers, San Francisco 49ers. And then tomorrow, we will have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Detroit Lions. And then to wrap things up tomorrow night, we will have the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. So a lot of football actions as we start approaching the Super Bowl, which is we have the conference championship next week, then you have the bye. So in 3 weeks, less than about 3-4 weeks away from the Super Bowl. And then we get a countdown to the days of spring training, which is typically 2 weeks later. Looking at the calendar here, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 1 month away before pitchers and catchers report, position players report, all that fun stuff. So we got ourselves quite a ways to go. Still a lot to talk about. But let's kick things off right down to business and talk about this is kind of a red flag in the WWE. And earlier this week, for those who did not get a chance to watch Monday Night Raw, has not updated themselves on what has happened so far, we have found ourselves dealing with a little bit of a pickle. Seth Rollins defended his World Heavyweight Championship last Monday against Jinder Mahal. And he goes on and retains that title, but it doesn't come without a price. An MRI was done with Seth Rollins earlier this week, and it showed that he has torn his MCL and partially torn his meniscus. And, we are on the road to WrestleMania. I don't care what you guys say. Day one is, of the year, the day one Monday Night Raw show was the official road to WrestleMania. And it is important that, we protect our athletes. But, when injuries do occur, we have Seth Rollins. Oh, sorry. Trying to put our little one down for a nap, and the wife's in the bedroom, and within seconds, he went down, which is great. But no, I mean, we are within, months away from WrestleMania. You usually want to make sure that as storylines develop, as you paint this picture of what WrestleMania could look like, you want to ensure that our athletes are safe. And it is just a terrible time to deal with any type of injury. We've seen injuries occur. Just a few years ago at the Royal Rumble, which is a week from today, we saw AJ Styles who got hurt, and those are setbacks, right? A couple of months ago, Charlotte Flair, or actually just a couple weeks ago, Charlotte Flair underwent knee surgery. Looks like she will be out of WrestleMania this year, which there could have been a lot of huge potential matches lined up for her. I know that right now, opponent wise, to really build up hype and the heat for Charlotte Flair is kind of a lackluster. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, for anyone else who could think this way, but I thought a very good possible candidate leading into WrestleMania for a talent like Charlotte Flair had to be Jade Cargill. And, I don't know, last time I heard anything about Jade Cargill, it was that she is just not ready, or the WWE is not ready, and they're not going to rush her into being ready. And they're not just going to throw her in, which great move. I like it. But when you think of the dominance that Jade Cargill provided for the AEW roster, then to come over to the WWE, as this dominant figure, woman figure, you kind of consider Jade, Charlotte, just a no-brainer to happen. And wouldn't it be better to have it at the grandest stage of them all? So injuries do occur. I mean, we're still even up in the air if Rey Mysterio will return by WrestleMania. So, there is still, I know there's still ways away to go. I've seen athletes wrestle with torn ligaments all the time. I don't know how this affects with labor, with the whole, this new dynamic of labor laws and whatnot, but it makes you sit on the edge of your seat. And it's almost a blow to the WWE because Seth Rollins is that workhorse. He has, he's done a really good job holding that World Heavyweight Championship, defending it, and representing Raw, the WWE, that title, wherever he goes. And he's that, he's that guy who, come WrestleMania season, you gotta have in there. I would argue a WrestleMania would be the same today without Seth Rollins. And he's just one of those key opponents. So I really don't know what this means. Listen, the WWE has a lot of great doctors. Sometimes you could say, all right, physical therapy, let's lighten up the workload for him. This will heal on its own, or let's get him through WrestleMania if he has to get surgery done. But that at this moment, we're talking about January 20th. We're sitting here January 20th. If he has to get surgery done, all right, you got 2 months out. If he has to get surgery done to repair his knee, I don't know if he would be ready because he's a high flyer too. He moves a lot, and I know that he talked to Steve about knees and injuries and stuff like that, and wrestlers use a lot of their legs to catch themselves, to move, and I just do not know if Seth Rollins or if the WWE could recover a 2-month span of recovery for a knee surgery. So, and listen, matter of fact, let me rephrase that because I think the WWE could recover. I mean, I think Seth Rollins could recover enough to compete, but to a WrestleMania standard, it's questionable. And if so, what type of risk you put Seth Rollins moving forward if you do rush him back sooner than expected? So I guess we're going to have to wait and see if Seth is going to have surgery. I'm assuming they're going to, if I'm playing the books correctly, he doesn't have a title defense now. I think you keep him very limited for the next 6 weeks. Evaluate him then, because that still gives you, I think, plenty enough time that you could, if you have to take the title off of him or crown a new, vacate the title and crown him, crown a new champion for WrestleMania, I think you could do so. And so I think that I think there's a 6-week window that you can completely shut down Seth Rollins. He can still go out there and cut promos. He can still go out there and sit at the commentary station. Just no work to be done on him. And see where he's at in 6 weeks from now, which that would technically be the end of February. And then make that decision then. And maybe see if you could get him through Mania, because it's also looking like there's a chance that he could be dropping the title anyways. So if you could get him through Mania and then drop the title, and then he goes, maybe he goes on a recovery process where he gets his knee, a knee surgery, and he doesn't come back for 3-4 months, then I think that's a bit better. Talking about all of that, let's give credit where credit's due. Earlier this week, Roman Reigns has surpassed a handful of guys. I saw a post about Roman Reigns passing up Hulk Hogan on a title reign, and then now one of Bruno Sammartino's title reigns also. Roman Reigns' ongoing reign of 1,238 days, that includes today, as Universal Champion is the 4th longest championship reign in WWE history, and the longest championship reign since 1988. Now, we talked about this the past couple of weeks, and we know that Roman Reigns was going to surpass this date beyond some. The question beholds is how much longer does Roman Reigns keep this title? And it's a yearly question. As a matter of fact, it's a monthly question. Because you just, when you start, you're at this number that is very difficult to be kept, or to keep up. And all good things do eventually come to an end. But let's take a moment back just to celebrate, because it is an achievement. Now, wrestling is completely different today compared to 40, 50 years ago when Bruno Sammartino was holding it, the Bob Backlund, Pedro Morales, Hulk Hogan, right? And they were going out there, wrestling 8 times a week, once a day, twice on Sundays. And they would have 400 to 500 matches a year. And now it would be unheard of to, you'd be lucky to have 100 matches a year in this industry. And Roman Reigns particularly has only 11 matches of this year. This past year was only 11 matches. I think he only even defended that title, 8 of those times. So it's kind of hard when you want to compare a guy like Roman Reigns and acknowledge or celebrate his accomplishment of this title reign when you have when you sit here and you look at the comparison of what he's done compared to what someone like Hulk Hogan's done. Roman has, Triple H said this last year, that Roman, he got a contract, a sweet contract that favors him. You also got to remember Roman still, is always cautious and whereabouts of battling his leukemia. And, I feel like it's a bit tarnished the longer he holds it. But he's making history. And I think with the bloodline story and everything else going on, it still has to be acknowledged and recognized to this day. So, we can't go unheard of. I will personally always think that guys like Pedro and Hogan has definitely really captured the sentimental value of the title defenses that Roman Reigns has had. And don't get me wrong, because Roman Reigns has had incredible matches when he does defend his title. But he's at this stage where, this title is, and his reign is far bigger than just your average Joe coming up to him. Last year, Roman Reigns had to face Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. Roman Reigns won. There was a little bit of a backstory on how the Rhodes family has never held this title at all. And now then throughout the year, we see LA Knight challenge Roman Reigns. And you just kind of knew in your head that, LA Knight, although he's getting a decent push, he's not beating Roman Reigns whatsoever. So, as you start thinking about, okay, the wins and wheres and what's going to happen when it's time for Roman to drop this title, you also got to think about logistically the opponent, because that opponent's storyline, that opponent's reasoning to win that Universal Championship is going to have to be as big, if not bigger, than Roman Reigns and this title reign. And the longer this reign goes, and, I'm throwing it out there, it could possibly go on for another year, then, we're really looking in for something pretty incredible. So, anyways, congratulations to Roman Reigns and his 1,238 title reign. All right. A little slow start off to the program, but we're just getting underway here on a Saturday morning. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys are listening to us on our YouTube page, Facebook page, we want to thank you. Be sure to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. If you guys are listening to us on the audio, we appreciate it. If you miss anything from today or anything like that, head on over to our website at www.tncsportstalkshow.com. That is www.tncsportstalkshow.com, where you can find all of our latest videos, blogs, audio podcasts, merchandise page, contact information, and much more. All right, we're going to take a first break of the morning. Come on back, talk more sports. 2 hours with you. You guys are listening to The Throne on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, we got to give a big shout out to StreamYard Studios, the proud home of the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel, where you can create videos, podcasts, host virtual business meetings, and even conduct interviews. Check out their free version today at StreamYard.com. Alrighty, back in here. It's been kind of cold the last couple of days. We finally had our what I would consider our first, blanket of snowfall. Was it Thursday night into Friday? The girls were out of school, which was nice because they were able to help me. They help out a lot. You'd be surprised with taking care of Elias, who is my son, by the way. He'll be 4 months this coming up Tuesday, which is a big deal. We're starting him on things like rice cereal and oatmeal, eating actual food. We're at least starting to introduce that to him. And boy, the last 4 months have just flew on by. But yeah, so I actually get a text early yesterday morning from a good friend of mine, Steve Barber, who he'll be actually doing an interview with me here now that you guys will be able to listen to and watch here in the next couple of days. But he joined. He texted me. He was like, hey, listen, I'm doing a podcast episode for the Royal Rumble statistics. If you're available, I will love it that you'd stop on by. I said, sure thing. And this was when, as soon as I get on, my son is sleeping in the swing, and it's a hit or miss. He's either asleep for 20 minutes, he slept for 2 hours. The girls are all playing, and as soon as we probably like within 10 minutes of hitting record for that podcast, he wakes up. He's starting to get a little fussy. He first starts off by just looking and watching and listening. Then he starts getting fussy, and I ended up actually having to hold him towards the end of the episode, which you could actually see at Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast on YouTube. Be sure to like and share, subscribe to their channel. Steve and Dwaylen does amazing work when it comes down to wrestling news, stories, topics. It's a 1-2 combination that so in this industry, podcast industry, talk show industry, even radio industry, just overall, it is very rare to have just a few people that click together, that just are able to commingle. I listen to a local San Diego radio show called Ben and Woods, and they just click together. They just it feels right that they do a show together. Steve and Dwaylen, they've been friends for a long time, so it doesn't surprise me, but they just click together. They just know they almost could feed off of each other to carry on a show. If you just told them, hey, sit down, create a show, 2 seconds, here we go. Dwaylen and is that encyclopedia. He's kind of just, hey, show me what you want to know, and I can be able to almost re-incite everything. And Steve, he's just they're just something different. And it's a podcast of just 2 wrestling fans that love talking about sports, love providing knowledge and their opinions and the stories that are going on in this world. And they just, sometimes, I love listening to analytics. I love listening to reporters. I love listening to journalists speak about their opinions. But a lot of times it's about just fans. I want to listen to what what fan base has to say. So to sit here and to be able to have a podcast like that, and this is just something else I'll talk about, because they both have individual podcasts going out beyond, the Armchair Booking Wrestling podcast. But they're always open to, collaborating with other podcasters, whether it's another wrestling podcast or sports podcasts and like mine, or just storytelling and whatnot. And that is a huge, huge part of being a successful podcaster or radio host or just any audio product out there, is that you have to be willing and capable to put yourself out there, receive back information, and just start collaborating among each other. So check out their podcast on YouTube, Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to their channel. Hit those notifications. Also download them on all audio streaming platforms. You can't miss them. They're everywhere. You could also follow them on their social media pages, and stay tuned for that interview with Steve that's coming up. Alrighty. So we talked a little. We opened the show up with a little bit of WWE. We wish, hopefully, as we, continue to learn about Seth Rollins, torn MCL and what that means for the WWE, for Raw, for the World Heavyweight Championship down the road. SmackDown got pretty interesting last night. First of all, let's give a big congratulations to seeing Pete Dunne return. Pete Dunne's been in the WWE for a few years now, and when he got brought up, they changed his name from Pete Dunne to Butch. It really was an off character for me. The only reason why it worked because he was that psychotic maniac that joined the Brawling Brutes. And you had to almost be able to tame him, and it was hard to do so. That's the only reason why, in my opinion, he stayed alive and hot so often, was because he was able to do that. But they've been kind of notioning lately, hey, I want to see, Tyler Bates coming up. I want to see Pete Dunne. And we finally see it last night. Pete Dunne, the character of Pete Dunne is back. And we saw the destruction that they had in a tag team action taking on Pretty Deadly. And I just think, I talked about it earlier this week. I just think the tag team division is growing. And I think what we're seeing is that in every category, whether it's single male wrestlers, single female wrestlers, tag team female wrestlers, tag team male wrestlers, fractions, okay, because we got AOP now back with Karrion Kross, Paul Ellering, and Scarlett. We also see Angelo Dawkins, Montez Ford, Bobby Lashley as a fraction. The Bloodline is still a fraction on Raw, so you got 3 right there. And then you still got the LWO. You have the basic, I'm going to call them LWO 2.0 and LWO. And then you have on Raw the Judgment Day. And I just think in every category that you set up on, all right, you got to have, you're establishing the single male roster, single male females. I think, unfortunately with injuries, I think there are setbacks, but they're doing pretty well. Fractions, they are pretty solid in also. The tag team division, pretty well. It's solid in too. They're establishing themselves. And what this does is now generate opportunity. Okay. It generates storylines. There is now, from what a segment may stretch out to an hour because you had to find a way to fill in a show. Now you have like 10 different stories going on a 2-hour episode of SmackDown. And you got every segment is something a bit different. And even if those feuds that aren't being paid attention to week after week after week, or don't open up and close your show, they're still evolving, and they're still finding a way to implementing them. Now, this is when you would find it beneficial to see a third party show like Main Event, so you can continue to tell those stories. But WWE isn't planning on rushing anything, which is great because you're allowing the story to develop. A lot of times, these stories you don't know where they're going, and then they get pushed to tell a story. Tell their story within 2-3 weeks, and then the fans can't even determine if they like it or not. So then they fall off, or someone gets hurt in those 2 weeks. So I just like everything that's going on. Big thing though coming out of SmackDown last night is, we're getting closer to the Royal Rumble. Last night was supposed to be the contract signing for the Fatal 4-Way match for that, undisputed championship that Roman Reigns has. And Paul Heyman says Roman refuses to sign that contract. And therefore, Nick Aldis has to step in and say, guess what? If he does not sign this contract, he is going to vacate the contract. One way or the other, we are going to have a match for this championship. And this is probably just another reason why putting Nick Aldis as the GM of SmackDown was the right decision. Could you have done this segment and be as successful and with Adam Pearce? Could Adam Pearce be as stern and be as, maybe I'm using this word incorrectly, but intuitive in using with the bloodline? Nick Aldis has came into SmackDown and really held the reign, and now is forcing, and basically taking over the show. He's forcing Roman Reigns' hand. Yeah, he's the champion. Yeah, he's the tribal chief. Yeah, he's the head of the table, but he isn't the guy in charge when it comes down to SmackDown overall. And if he doesn't sit there and create title opportunities for the talent that is working their asses off, then guess what? We're going to do something about that. Randy Orton was able to cap off the night by hitting Roman Reigns with an RKO, which is always fun to see. But the table has been set for, the Royal Rumble, and we see we're going to be seeing a fatal 4-way one way or another, which is now, I think, I talked earlier about this on previous programs. The Rock returning, wanting a champion, you're not even a championship, but wanting to sit at the head of the table. It's a story with itself, but at the same time, you have to give Dwayne Johnson a reason to come back. And I believe the reason that he needs to come back is saying, Roman, you've had your fun in the sun at the head of the table. You are abusing your role and your power as tribal chief. It's time to let's bring you back down to level. So that's what I personally see. And maybe I'm, just talking nonsense. But man, not going to get too much into SmackDown. We're going to move on. Bottom of hour number 1 here. What are some options for the Reds infields? We are stacked with a lot of great talent. But how could the Reds infield look like come opening day? We will explore those options coming up next here on The Throw-In, available on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. All right, we are officially less than 1 month away from pitchers and catchers reporting down out to Arizona. And we are excited. I'm particularly excited because it's baseball season. It's my favorite season of the year. You got the road to WrestleMania. Well, we have upcoming Super Bowl. We have the road to WrestleMania unwinding. We got WrestleMania. Practically the same time baseball opens up, and the Reds will be opening up against the Washington Nationals. And there's a lot of exciting things going on, but there's still a lot of great conversation. There's still a lot of opportunities and free agents out there that can help pinpoint, just the success for the Reds. Unfortunately, we did see a free agent, a closer, get picked up yesterday to wrap up the week. Josh Hader has signed a 5-year, $95 million deal with the Houston Astros. Hader was traded from Milwaukee over to San Diego a few years back when the Padres were making that push. And he was your kind of everyday closer, so to speak. Kind of filled in the Padres back into the bullpen pretty nicely. Became a free agent this year and landed himself a deal with the Houston Astros. Now, the Houston Astros have kind of been that decade team. They almost tackled along out there with the Texas Rangers throughout the course of the last season. They came up short from a World Series opportunity, and maybe Josh Hader's that missing piece that the Astros need. I really don't think so. I mean, I'm a bit surprised, but I'm not, because that he got picked up and you were less than a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting, because a lot of teams these days do not have a closing pitcher assigned. And if they did, it wouldn't be assigned up until maybe when they have to submit their roster to Major League Baseball prior to opening day. And so for me, Josh Hader is I think is a really good closer. I mean, when you compare him or you talk to him about, Craig Kimbrell in his prime, I mean, there's a lot to like about Josh Hader. But I think just maybe the dollar figures is a bit much as someone who will probably give you a solid maybe 30 saves, 40 saves a season. But you know what? The Astros have put themselves in the opportunity to have those saves quite often. And if Josh Hader is that closing pitcher and all he's asked to do is to pitch the 9th inning, regardless if they're lefty righty situation, then hey, it's a payday. It's one of those big news. It's not surprising that he went to the Astros, but then it's like when you sit here in Cincinnati and you're like, could have we really afforded a guy like Josh Hader? Couldn't we benefit from a guy like Josh Hader? I mean, yeah, we knew the Shohei Ohtani deal was way out of, left field that we couldn't possibly touch with a 10-foot pole if we had a chance to. But I think that there are opportunities that we may be missing out for improvement of this ball club. And if we don't, if we're set on in the infield and we're moving pieces around to fit the outfield and we have some pitching, we could always use more pitching, right? You can never get enough with pitching. So talking about everything that is unfolding, let's look at our defense, at our defensive infield. There's a couple scenarios that come to play, and we're talking about guys like Ellie De La Cruz, Jonathan India, Matt McLean, Noel V. Marte, Christian Encarnacion-Strand, and even Jameer Candelario. Now, I would throw Spencer Steer into this conversation, But apparently, from my understanding, they are going to look at him in the outfield to kind of help out because they don't have that right-handed batter out there, really, so to speak. If you keep Stuart Fairchild out there, then maybe Will Benson's a right fielder, but they don't provide pop to the bat. So you throw Spencer Steer out there for a while, but I really like Spencer Steer has kind of been all over the place from third base to first base. Now maybe looking at the outfield. Well, that's going to be because Christian and Encarnacion Strand can either, he could only play first base. And you would probably want to use Christian as much as possible at first base if that's the only position right now he excels in. There's no point of putting him on the bench and having him become a utility player. And maybe he could look a little bit at third base throughout the course of spring training this year, but I wouldn't feel comfortable enough to put him there. So for me, either you put CES, I'm not to get used to saying that because I'm not saying his name every single time, but either you throw CES at first base or you could possibly use him as a DH, but then that takes up from a guy maybe like a Tyler Stevenson or Jake Fraley or Jonathan India or even a Spencer Steer. So when we look around the horn right now, Christian looks more favorable at first base. And I still think that, we have a couple other first basemen, Candelario. We also can see India tackle on a little bit of first base. I still like the idea that Stevenson can do a little bit first as well as Spencer Steer. So I feel pretty comfortable throughout the course of this season, but I really urge the push that Christian Encarnacion Strand takes on that first base spot. This is when, we kind of already know some of the in-depths about where position or which player could be at which position. Noelvi Marte can play, I believe, third, short, or second base. And I like him coming off the bench or playing second base more, as a favorite. He could obviously fit in at shortstop when, Dela Cruz needs a day off. He could also fill in at third base when Candelario needs a day off. But I'd like to see Marte just focus on second base and coming off the bench. Because I got Ellie Dela Cruz at shortstop. There's just this level of talent that, listen, he reminds me a lot like Fernando Tatis Cruz, who started off at short, made some really incredible plays, ended up getting a mega deal contract, and then now he's playing right field. And I just don't feel like we sold enough with, Fernando Tatis at shortstop. And I don't know if Dela Cruz is going anywhere else but shortstop. I don't think he's going to be over there at first or second. He's not. He may play some third a little bit, maybe DH a little bit at best. I don't see him playing outfield at all. So that's why I'm putting, he's your everyday starter at short. And then at third base, you got Candelario. You signed him as a free agent. You're going to utilize him as much as possible. He could only ever play first base. So between whoever's at first and, him at third, then that's where I see Candelario playing at. I think it's just a nice position, which means the biggest position I'm looking at, who's starting off at second. Well, here's a two-way situation because a conversation has floated that Jonathan India may also be another guy who will get some cracks in the outfield to help with the pop. Well, we have David Bell's going to have some confining to do because You're going to have to determine who's your everyday second baseman. I don't think you should leave that position open as much. I think you should have that designated second baseman there, which can be, I mean, Steer can do it. India does it best, in my opinion. Even Matt McClain, Noel V. Marte, maybe as he grows throughout the course of the year, you make that transition if he continues to improve. Well, now, if you're asking me that question, I'd throw in India. He just makes sense. He's an everyday second baseman that I think benefits a lot at second base. He knows the position. He also, because he could be that infield communicator among everybody. He could also communicate to the outfield. The other thing is I like McClain coming off the bench. He's a utility guy. He could play anywhere. He could play first base. He could play second base, third base, shortstop. He could play outfield. Now, he doesn't provide that, that great, off the bat, he's not putting up 26 home runs a year, but he's a guy, he's a jack of all trades. And to utilize him on a daily basis in the infield, I think you're just not getting his full potential out there. Yes, is having him play all around the diamond plus the outfield a lot. Yeah, but I mean, there's not many players out there, so to speak, that can play all 8 positions well. And Matt McClain is the closest thing that the Reds have, especially because they're trying to utilize Steer maybe more in the outfield. You're throwing in a guy like India in the conversation to outfield. Matt McClain is also a righty that can be in the outfield. So if you're asking me, here's some options that they have. They got Christian Encarnacion strand at first, McClain at second, Marte at short, Dela Cruz at third, or then you get Dela Cruz at short and then Candelario at third. You could also see McClain at second. You could also then see in India at the DH coming off the bat. There's a lot going on here. Trust me. So which is good news because David Bell has a lot to work with. You got a lot of guys that can play multiple positions. This spring training, I think you really test of who you really want to look at certain and where and see what best fits. You got like 28, 30 games in spring training to really see where you detail that. So if you're okay, so here's that my take on that. Christian Encarnacion, you're gonna work towards Christian being your everyday first baseman, but I toss Spencer Steer back over there from time to time. If not, I'm throwing Candelario over there from time to time. All right. Or you know what? Forget about that. I throw Tyler Stevenson there from time to time. He's done a little bit of first base action. Then I would have India, my best bet. Either India, maybe, and then halfway through the season, see where Marte is. Maybe have Marte another second baseman. Or maybe you go out on a free agent market, or in a trade throughout the course of the year. If you trade India, because that's always a possibility, and you get an everyday second baseman. Then I put Cruz at short, Candelario at third. I'd put McClain on the bench. He'd probably be my DH, or Steer would be my DH. And then McClain can then be on the bench as a utility guy, followed by Marte. That's kind of how I would almost put this infield. But just let's remind us about the initial frontline story is that we do have a stack infield. We have a versatile infield. We have an infield that can contribute to the outfield. So although the outfield is lined up with a lot of left-handed batters, we are able to see a little bit more, we can see some infield, some right-handed infields kind of help and step in. That means hour number 2, and we will talk a lot about football as the divisional round begins here today, later on this afternoon. You guys are listening to Throw-In on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. You know, that right there takes about 45 to 50 seconds. And I really like it, to be honest, because it kind of builds up and then it just goes. And I just have to wait, you know, so when we get later and later into the next segment to begin hour number 2, it's just frustrating. But hour number 2 is given to you through Spreaker. Spreaker is not just an audio listening app. Spreaker allows you to upload your own podcast Distributed across all major audio platforms such as iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, and many more. Check out their free options today at Spreaker.com. And check us out, The Throw-In. Download us, listen to us through Spreaker. You know, outside says it's 6 degrees, but it feels like 1. And I just, I'm wondering why I'm in so much pain, because the cold weather sometimes is aggravating, very aggravating. But no, we're getting through it. You know, I got a chance to watch Georgetown and Xavier last night. Had some friends come over. They're my wife's friends. They come over for dinner. I guess I'll consider them friends too. But they came over for dinner last night. And I had Georgetown and Xavier on. I couldn't find the remote. I was actually going to change the channel. But I'm so glad I didn't, because Xavier was actually losing, was actually down the entire game. And it wasn't until the last minute and a half where they jumped up to a lead. And then they get ahead of Georgetown 92-91. And with like 30 seconds left of the clock, and Georgetown's getting the ball. Last timeouts, has already been used with 90 seconds left of the game. Excuse me. And so I'm watching the game, and the fans are going crazy, in Xavier, again, at the arena. And we get down the last 30 seconds. They're setting up, and Xavier decides within like 15 seconds left, they're going to go double team. And then that forces them to get rid of Georgetown to get rid of the ball. They try to lay it up, and and no penalty. That's one of my biggest fears, is penalties to come across the board. And luckily there wasn't no penalties. Xavier gets the ball, and they had an incredible 1-point win. Xavier beats Georgetown 92-91. They were talking about a statistic that the last time Georgetown beat Xavier on the road was actually January 19th of 2016. I believe it was 16 or 18. I need new glasses. So I'm looking, I'm just like, dude, how can and Georgetown is 1-5 in the Big East. You have a 3-3 Georgetown. We're playing like this is the national championships. The environment is national championships, and it just starts reminding you that not every college basketball team has this type of energy coming from their fan base, but you get majority. If you find the right team, you just know. You just wonder, why aren't you watching college basketball a little bit more? It's one of those things where I'm just like, well, maybe I should start turning them on just a little bit more. Maybe when is their next game so I can tune in? Gosh, I just tell you, it was a fun game. So I'm going to save a certain topic to the end of the program. But we're getting into the NFL divisional round playoffs. And there's a couple of facts that I saw in this article. It was written by Douglas Clausen yesterday. And it's about a 4-minute read. So I'd like to share with you what it says. And basically, it's just, there's 15 facts that you should know this weekend through, the CBS Sports Research. So let's give them a chance, and let's see what type of facts they're pointing out, and see if we agree or not. Just gotta get my water. All right, number 1, Patrick Mahomes on the road. Patrick Mahomes makes his 16th career playoff start on Sunday against Buffalo, but his first on the road. His streak of 15 straight playoff starts without a true road game is the longest streak by a quarterback in NFL history. Peyton Manning was the second longest with 12. I did not know that. And I think that means if you are having, you would have 2 technically home games if you have the first round bye, which means you would have to, that's 2, 4, 6, 8. That's years. That's a couple years. And if you had 3 games, that's still at least what, 3, 4 years? So that's still, I think that's a remarkable fact just to keep a note of. This is Patrick Mahomes' very first road game in the postseason. And you're going to Buffalo. I mean, and we'll talk about it in the next segment, but Buffalo, similar than Kansas City and weather-wise, but we'll see. Chiefs streak on the line. Kansas City is seeking its 6th straight conference championship trip, which would be the second longest streak ever from 2011 to 2018 Patriots, who had 8 in a row. We're talking about the dynasty Patriots. Crazy. Number 3, Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen. Rivals Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning. Mahomes and Allen meet for the 7th time on Sunday, matching Brady and Manning's for the most matchups in quarterbacks from different divisions in 4-year span. The writer writes Monday about how Mahomes and Allen are the best rivalry since Brady and Manning, hands down. I agree to an extent. I would then maybe argue that Mahomes and Burrow is a little bit, could be argued in that conversation. Number 4, another thriller. This is the first Chiefs-Bills playoff game since the 42-36 overtime thriller won by Kansas City 2 years ago. It featured the most points scored after the 2-minute warning. I remember that game in NFL history, and the latest game tying going-ahead drive in NFL playoff history. Chiefs force overtime after getting the ball back with 13 seconds left. A lot of Bills and Chiefs history behind this. Ravens have it all at number 5. The Ravens have the MVP favorite at quarterback, the league's top rusher offense, and top scoring defense. Sounds like an unstoppable combination, right? Lamar Jackson was named a first-team All-Pro selection last week. The Ravens are the 4th team since the 1970 with a first-team All-Pro quarterback and number 1 scoring defense. The other 3 teams all won Super Bowls. The 1972 Dolphins, the 1978 Steelers, and the 1996 Packers. We talked, there was a little bit of history last week that Packers never lost in Dallas. This history kind of refold itself. A not so fast segment here, number 6. Let's not forget Lamar Jackson is 1-3 in his playoff career with more turnovers, number 7, than total touchdowns of 4, 7-4 ratio there. It is hard to believe C.J. Stroud and Jackson had the same number of playoff wins, but it's true. Another one and done after 2019 would be a very bad look for Baltimore. They would become the only team since the merge to lose multiple playoffs openers after posting a 200-point differential. Jackson could be the first quarterback with more MVPs than playoff wins That assumes he wins MVP this year, which most likely he will. Number 7, Big Stage Stroud. CJ Stroud can become the first quarterback to beat the number 1 scoring defense Ravens and the number 1 total defense Browns in the same postseason in different games since Steve McNair, who did it back in 1999 for the Titans. It could be another incredible playoff performance versus a top defense for Stroud. 2, between the college football playoffs and the NFL postseason, he's racked up 622 passing yards and 7 touchdown passes in 2 games. College football playoffs performance was against the Georgia number 1 defense last year. Number 8, Houston, we have liftoff. With a win on Saturday against the Ravens, the Texans would have the longest preseason SB odds, Super Bowl odds, by a team to reach the conference championship in the past 45 years. That's 200-1, by the way, passing the 1999 Rams that were sitting at 150-1. And the 2021 Bengals, who were also sitting at 150-1. Crazy so far. All right, let's finish this list here. Coming in at number 9, first impressions matter. Jordan Love and Brock Purdy are 2 of the 5 QBs in NFL history with 30 touchdown passes and 4 passing yards in the first season as a full-time starter. I mean, Brock Purdy seems to be, we forget a lot about Brock Purdy being this is his first year at starting from start to finish. So, of course, they square off with a trip to the conference championship game on the line. The other 3 on that list, by the way, is Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, and Kurt Warner. Number 10, good as gold. The 49ers trip to the conference championship game is as good as gold. They have reached the conference championship game each of their last 6 times they made the playoffs. The Patriots 8 are only the team longer streak in NFL history. Number 11, TD underdogs again. Packers already beat the Cowboys as a touchdown underdog, and they can pull off another upset versus the 49ers in a similar fashion. Only 4 teams have won multiple playoff games as a TD underdog since 1970. The 1996 Jaguars and the 2001 Patriots, 2007 Giants, and the 2012 Ravens. The last 3 won Super Bowls. Number 12, they wrote me off. I ain't right back, though. Interesting words there. The Geno Smith quote applies to Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield, the former number 1 overall pick who both won playoff games last weekend after being written off the last few years. They are the only number 1 overall picks to win a playoff game with multiple franchises before turning 30. Interesting facts. Quarterback, number 13, quarterback blueprint. There's a record 7 former first-round QB starting this weekend. The most in a divisional round ever. CJ Stroud, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Jordan Love. 5 were traded up for. The lesson: be aggressive, move up and get your guy, plus have a succession plan. Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes, Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson. Better than never. Better late than never, excuse me. Number 14 reads in, half of the remaining playoff teams were not even a playoff spot through week 12. The Texans, Bills, Buccaneers, and Packers, all 4 clinched a playoff spot in week 18. the last team to win a title after clinching in the final week of the regular season was the 2011 Giants. And that coming in at number 15, historic offense does not equal a title. The 49ers were an offensive juggernaut this year, averaging 6.61 yards per play. Good for seventh best marked by any team in Super Bowl era. But did you know none of the top 12 teams on this list won a Super Bowl? That is 15 interesting facts that I didn't even know. I read this for the very first time for you guys. Written by Douglas Clausen on the CBSSports.com under the article 2024 NFL Divisional Round Playoffs, Facts to Know, Patrick Mahomes on the road, Lamar Jackson struggles, and more, if you are interested in reading that article for yourself. So as we are hours away from the first kickoff and the first matchup, let's come on back and let's talk our own selves and give you our thoughts and opinions. I would love to hear from you who you guys will think will head to the conference championships. But that will all continue right after this break. You guys listen to the Throwing on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, it is divisional round playoff times in the NFL, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it feels like the NFL hasn't really had a lot of conversations. Normally, I remember last year talking about the postseason, and there was just a lot of conversations and details putting into these games after games after games. And I don't know. There's just something that really, and it was easy to come up with stories and conversation, and news and stuff like that last year that I feel was a bit different this year. Almost feels like I've been struggling a little bit. Let's get down into because game by game, there's 4 games, 2 games today, and 2 games tomorrow. First game today is kicking off at 4:30 Eastern Standard Time between the number 4 seed Houston Texans and the number 1 seed Baltimore Ravens. Coming up next after that one is the 8:15 on Fox. The number 7 Green Bay Packers taking on the number 1 San Francisco 49ers. Tomorrow, 2 more games continue at 3 p.m. on NBC. We have the number 4 seed Tampa Bay Buccaneers going on again, taking on the number 3 seed Detroit Lions, and then to wrap things up tomorrow night, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time on CBS, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. And we've seen a lot of great matchups, and we just, the previous segment was talking about teams, about facts. And one thing that I think, bro, has brought to my attention, it has been a while since we've seen the Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills in the playoffs. They had a couple of playoff appearances before. But let's kick things off with the Texans and the Baltimore Ravens. And I'm going to go out there and say, no one expected for the Texans to make it to the playoffs this year. I know I'm beating the dead buck by saying that every single time, but it's true. No one expected them to draft CJ Stroud. They draft a linebacker in the draft last year, and they weren't expected to make any run. They were still far from it. And so, this is one of those, you sprinkle a little fairy dust over the team and see where it goes, and hey, it could fly scenario. I will tell you today, like I told you last week for the Texans, if they lose, it's a win-win. There's a lot you could grow off of a team right now if you're the Texans. So if you lose, don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world. You're in Baltimore, and they're notorious to having a really good crowd there. I don't think, Jackson, I think there's a lot more writing on this game for Baltimore. They just got done dealing with, Lamar's contract. We just learned that he's 1-3 in the postseason. Okay. They have made that case claiming that they're the best team in the AFC. And they really walked by that case for the last couple of weeks. And they have something to prove. They made it to the wild card last year, but they knew that they weren't as good as a team that they think they are now. I think it would be such a upset that if Baltimore ends up losing. And then, as a person who is talking sports in a Cincinnati sports area, we saw 2/3 of the AFC North get eliminated. One of them, thanks to the Houston Texans, who we have to give a big, applause. But now we have to come back and say, Houston, can you do it again? And you know what? I think they can. I think it's an even matchup because we haven't seen the Ravens. The last time they played was against the Steelers and they lost. And I think it's a similar notion to the Browns losing to the Bengals week 18. They carried that momentum into the into this wild card weekend last week, and they underestimated the Houston Texans. Do you think the Baltimore Ravens would underestimate the Houston Texans? Because I think it could either be a really good game or it could be a blowout game. And I'm kind of tired of blowout games. Saw enough last week. I will pass on this one. Houston is the underdog team. I think the majority of the world, if not at least in the States. I saw a map the other day about in what region are you choosing your team from. I think Houston was on that list of they carried about half of the states. So, kudos to the, I think I want Houston to win, but I think Baltimore will unfortunately carry it away. All right, the second game tonight, which will begin at 8:15, the number 7 Green Bay Packers taking on the San Francisco 49ers. Sometimes the momentum coming from a wild card weekend victory can really boost your confidence heading into a divisional game. Sometimes when you're running off of fumes, the Packers were one of the last teams to enter in the playoffs this year. There wasn't just a walk in the park. And not only that, they had to go into Dallas and take care of the Cowboys, which they did successfully. Now you're asking them to do it against the San Francisco 49ers. And basically what you're asking is the Packers you're asking the Packers to make a mistake. San Francisco has been through a handful of quarterbacks over the last 2 years. They ended up finishing with Brock Purdy, which has been, I think, so far so good. Knock on my table now. But now when you look at this chance, there's just something about San Francisco that just shows me that they're more of a completed team. I think looking forward, the Packers have that ability to be a top team in the NFC again. I really do. I mean, I saw a lot of great things from Jordan Love this year. I think this is a bounce back season, especially moving forward. And I think what the Packers have learned so far is that their future, as long as Jordan Love is healthy and as long as they continue to make progress, I think their future is safe in Green Bay, in the NFC North, excuse me. But I think that San Francisco is a bit more well put together. And I just talked about teams that lost week 18. Can Baltimore bounce? Is that momentum going to come back and bite them in the butt? It's hard to vote against. So this early on, I had the number 1 seeds in both of them, both Baltimore, both San Francisco. And, maybe it's a biased opinion, but I'm also rooting for the 49ers and or 49ers and Ravens to have a Super Bowl rematch and to really see, in this, 10 years When was? Hold on one second. Let me see. It was February. Was okay. So 11 years. It would be 11 years since they last seen each other in the Super Bowl. I would like to see them in the Super Bowl again if I got that opportunity. So 49ers, I think, will take this one. Moving on to Sunday's game, Tampa Bay and Detroit. I think this one is not going to get as much it's not going to receive as much credit. There's so much. I think this is one of the underrated games that you should well, not underrated games. Yes, I'm saying that correctly. They both have. You got Baker Mayfield on one end, who I think has been overlooked because of the past year. I've even overlooked him throughout the past year. And he's one of the guys that I preached about, that I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt going into Carolina, making that, a new, fresh, new start, new look. And it failed miserably. And I'm like, he's being picked up by the Buccaneers because there's no more Tom Brady. And so they picked up just an average schmuck of a quarterback. And I'm like, you could pick up Jacoby Brissett and be 10 times better. And Baker Mayfield has done nothing but prove us wrong. And, they took care of business last week. And it was fun to watch. And now, I can't help but to turn now and start paying attention to Baker Mayfield. And I'm actually a bit surprised that Tampa Bay is on that, on that type of, team still that is good enough to support a quarterback like, Mayfield that is not as good as Tom Brady, but they can, manage to get by. Detroit, I still think, has that written story about their playoff session that just it's like, how can you not want to root for Detroit? Finally winning a playoff game at home. They're going to host another team in the NFC South this time, and they probably have the favorites in winning this game. And it's the Jared Goff story. Jared Goff's been there. He's done it. He's been in the postseason. He's been in the Super Bowl. Detroit, he's been at places that Detroit has been craving so much. And, it was at even Schrupp. Matthew Stafford has gotten it. Now, Jared Goff probably, deserves one. I'm going and rooting for Detroit to win this game early on. All right, let's get to our last game here. Let me know what you guys think. Who you guys think is going to win this weekend, divisional round weekend? Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills, I think probably the most hyped up, exciting game. I mean, they kicked things off pretty well. Houston and Green Bay, or Baltimore. Green Bay and San Francisco, night one's pretty good matchup. But Kansas City and Buffalo, you know this story just as much as I know this story. Right now, what Kansas City did last weekend, beating Miami Dolphins, they will love nothing more but to eliminate the East. And they have a chance to do that this weekend. And not only that, is that one of its, what makes this game even more exciting is that Josh Allen is not the same Josh Allen from 2 years ago when they last met. And Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs alone is not the same team from when they met 2 years ago. 2 years ago, you would say it was almost impossible for the Bills to beat the Chiefs. And yeah, it went back and forth and back and forth. But now you're looking at this and I'm like, this is such an even matchup. It's going to come down to who makes, the Chiefs are going to have to keep their composure and just keep, synchronizing together and they'll be fine. I feel like it's easily said than done if you're looking at Kansas City that you can just do that. Hey, let's just stick to the game plan. Let's stay together. We're going to win this game as long as we do our individual jobs. Buffalo seemed a little bit more out of place. They seem to be a little bit more unstable. So I think in this game, Buffalo is going to have to prove themselves a little bit more. It's, last week we talked about could Kansas City turn on that playoff switch with a snap of a finger. And we were shown that, yes, they could. So could they continue is probably that bigger question. I have Kansas City over this one. And it's going to be a very, very interesting game. Probably the game of the divisional round alone. So, all right, let's take our final break of the program. When we come on back, we will wrap up our show. You guys are listening to The Throw-In on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel.
all I think about is you and me up in a tree, yeah. You whisper something in my ear, the only thing I wanna hear. Oh, you tell me that you think about us, K-I-S-S-I-N-G, yeah. I go and pay at the bar, you go and order a car. I might not give you my heart, but you can have the rest of me. Don't think twice.
Alrighty, bottom half of the program here. Last segment to fill. I have a pet peeve for you guys, and I just think the Dallas Cowboys made the stupidest move on planet Earth. I'm not Jerry Jones. I'm not in Dallas. I don't know what I can only read what is being given out to the public. I can't really, I'm not in those meetings. I'm not in those, in those conversations. But I'm sorry. Tell me if I'm wrong. That playoff loss last weekend was really embarrassing to the Dallas Cowboys, not only to the players, but to the fan, not only the fans or the staff members, to the entire history of the Cowboys. And when you have yet again another playoff run and you had such a successful season to end in the wild card game in the fashion they did, it wasn't like it was a close game. I'd understand if it was 23-24 and it came down to a fourth down conversion that just couldn't happen, or a field goal that missed left. But you know what? It wasn't about that. Packers got up to an early lead. And when you finish off the second seed in the NFC and get knocked out in the first game of the wild card, there has to be something that you have to change. Something has to go. And I surely believed that it had to do with Mike McCarthy and the head coach. And, when in doubt, you could have brought him back, and they did. They brought back Mike McCarthy. But they brought him back within days of making of everything unfolding. And we haven't even tested any offseason transitions, any head coaching possibilities. Unless Jerry Jones has a bad relationship with Jim Harbaugh or Bill Belichick or anyone along the line, or he really did not, it didn't seem like he didn't do any of his due diligence by even having conversations with them. I mean, are we missing something here? And if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan, are you satisfied? I think the only thing that we knew heading into Dallas, heading into this situation, we knew that Dak Prescott has a $60 million contract coming up next year. That unless you can work on restructuring his contract where you aren't taking a financial hit next season, which I know Cowboy fans are kind of hoping that's still on the table. That can still be done. But and I'm not saying that Mike McCarthy isn't the answer in Dallas. But what I'm saying is that when you have two great quarterbacks or two great coaches out there to do that can take you to a Super Bowl like Belichick and Jim's done in the past, then why are you not giving them a phone call? Why are you not in in the hunt and you're making headlines news? I said this back on Tuesday. If you're all 32 teams, I don't care who you are, has no reason not to call Jim Harbaugh. And there should not be a reason why there is not a report out there saying, hey, we made an effort and we at least called. He declined it. Okay, move on. Bill Belichick doesn't want to work in the Dallas Heat. Okay, we moved on. But I don't see anything like that happening. I didn't see anything like that happen at all. So what did happen? I have no idea. I'm not saying that Mike McCarthy is a bad head coach. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve another chance. I'm not saying that he doesn't fit in Dallas. What I'm saying is that when you have a chance to better yourself and you do not optimize that opportunity, what are you doing in the franchise? And it makes me to believe that Jerry Jones is okay to be an average football team. Now, I understand that Jerry Jones sat there and said, I was very, very emotional about the loss. I really did believe and convinced that we had an opportunity at winning it all, and we just couldn't get it done. And I did appreciate how he took a couple of days. So instead of making any irrational decisions, he can, recollect himself before saying, okay, now we're going to make a decision 3 days later. I appreciate that. But still, that's the best work Jerry Jones can do. The owners of the Dallas Cowboys, I don't even know the owner of the Cincinnati Bengals. Because, Jerry Jones makes the news everywhere he goes. If he gets out of bed, people are reporting about it. And so, and he has a big say in the NFL. Not to make any decisions or any type of effort, I think hurts. Mike Axisa from CBS Sports put out this article 30 minutes ago. A's considering AAA stadiums in Sacramento and Salt Lake City for temporary 2025 to 2027 seasons. Well, obviously we know the Athletics leads at Ring Central Coliseum, which was the former home of the Raiders before they moved to Vegas. It will expire at the end of this year, but their schedule or their stadium is not expected to be ready until 2020, I believe, 8 in Vegas. So one of the questions that lurk now is that, hey, this year is going to come and go really fast. Well, where are the homes of the A's going to be at afterwards? Well, they addressed it and said that there is a possibility that if they cannot come to any agreement or, which they just seem so far off that, they try to even offer, offering to play at Oracle Park, the home of the Giants. But they may have to resort down to their AAA team in Sacramento, that's still the home of the Giants, AAA team, or they may have to go to Salt Lake City, which is the AAA Angels team, for 2 seasons. Developing story as the story progresses. This year they'll play in their normal stadium. It's going to be down to next year. Do you blame players do you blame the players going into the transfer portal from Alabama to a different team since Nick Saban's retirement? Bama star DB's Caleb Downs transferring to Ohio State since Nick Saban decides to retire. I don't know. So here here's my take, real quick, on on the Alabama. You know, when Nick Saban was coaching, the standard he had, everything that he built the organization up. It's not. It was. Everyone pointed at one person. It wasn't just it wasn't a combination of this is how Alabama just does football. This is how Nick Saban did football. And a lot of people now and about to head into college football for that matter, had the notion of, hey, I got to play under Nick Saban. I want to play under Nick Saban. That's a lot of reasons why people go to college, is to eventually be good enough to go to Alabama to play under Nick Saban. Well, since Nick Saban's retired, and listen, we don't blame Nick Saban for any of that, but since he's retired, you kind of, I think kids are now reinvesting, looking into what they're interested in. And one of those conversations, I think, goes for show that, you're looking into seeing what, like Ohio State, Michigan, even without Jim Harbaugh, I think Michigan's a decent team. Georgia, for that matter. Some will stay with Alabama, but I think there was a lot has been gutted when you take away a top head coach like Nick Saban. Just like, when Mike Tomlin leaves Pittsburgh, I think a lot of Pittsburgh's going to change. I don't know what his plans are after next season, but if and when he decides to retire and leave Pittsburgh as a head coach, I think a lot of the dynamic and the way that Pittsburgh plays football will change, especially under new head coaches. I'm going to leave you off with this story here in the wrestling world. Kazuchika Okada is a current free agent in the wrestling market. There is the articles and stories reporting in regards into who or where he could potentially sign. Is it with AEW? Is it with the WWE? And if you're a free agent right there, I just want you thinking about this. If you are in the professional wrestling world, if you had the opportunity of getting a contract offer from Tony Khan, and understanding where AEW is at and where their future may be headed, when you get a contract offer from WWE and you see where they've been and where they're at now and where they could be headed, who would you sign with? Are you sticking with Triple H and WWE, or are you taking your chances? All right, that's all the time we have for our program. I want to thank everyone. Be sure to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Head on over to our website at www.tncsportstalkshow.com. That is www.tncsportstalkshow.com for all your latest news, updates, stories, and more. Until next time, you guys take care. Have a great rest of your weekend from the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel.